Hi, everyone. So my name is Cynthia Zapata, and today I will be presenting a study um, on the effect of semantic categorization on reading. So the study examines the way that categorization affects memory recall. Students were separated into two groups. One group was shown a list of words that were semantically categorized, and the other group was shown a list with the same words as the first list, but in random order. Both groups were then asked to recall as many words as possible by writing them down on a piece of paper. The results showed a significant difference between the groups. The group that was shown a semantically categorized list of words were able to recall more words from the list than the group that was shown the list that was in random order. The ability to recall events and memories is fundamental to several aspects of life. One of these aspects includes learning. Memory is used every day when it comes to learning, and it can be built on to develop problem-solving skills. Due to this need for memory and recall, people naturally tend to find ways to improve their capabilities by using tools such as accessing memories through association with other memories, mnemonic devices, acronyms, and other related tools. The categorization of information is one of the mechanisms that scientific researchers have studied extensively. Um, Categorizing information comes into play by structuring information into meaningful groups. These groups often share similarities in their characteristics, and this plays a role in memory processes. Boosfield studied semantic categorization in 1953, and he called these groups clusters. His study revealed that even with lists that lacked any type of semantic relationship, people still naturally tended to spontaneously organize words into clusters. This idea of clusters served as empirical evidence for a study done in 1975 by Collins and Loftus. Their study resulted in a theory called the spreading activation theory, which proposes that different concepts of information are organized in a network of nodes that are interconnected. When one node is activated, the information branches out throughout the network to other related nodes through associative links. The network of the nodes seems to influence several cognitive processes, such as the recognition of concepts and information being recalled. This study showed that one of the central parts of the spreading activation theory is what is called semantic priming. Semantic priming is where a stimulus such as like a word or image or concept facilitates the processing of another stimulus that is semantically related. So to put it plainly, when a word, image, or concept is encountered, the way that we process it is influenced by any other words, images, or concepts that we encountered recently, prior, or simultaneously. Um, the previous word, image, or concepts primes the related concepts in a person's semantic network of memory. So it makes it easier to recognize or generate new words, images, or concepts that are related in some way. This theory was actually also built off of a network model that Collins and Killian called the hierarchical network model, which proposes that concepts are organized based on how closely related they are and how specific they are. The concepts that are more general sit at the top or higher up on the network model, and the more specific concepts sit lower in the network. A few years later, Anderson did a study based off of the spreading activation theory, but applied it to memory and not just semantic processes of receiving information. He called it the spreading activation theory of memory. Um, he used a different model for this called the adaptive control of thought, or ACT model. This model incorporates both declarative and working memory. So declarative memory is knowledge known as facts, concepts, and their associations, and working memory is something like an office space or workspace where information can be manipulated and processed. With this model, Anderson found that categorization helped create clear mental representations and efficient retrieval cues. Um, Despite all these advancements, there have been some mixed findings. Murphy and Ronald did a study in 1985 that investigated how people recognize objects and place them into categorized groups based on visual features. While the researchers did find that participants could differentiate between objects from different categories, their findings were limited and insignificant when it came to identifying objects that were similar. What I found with all these studies is that connect semantic categorization and mental processes is that it's mostly focused on the way that we receive information and store it, but it hasn't really been put to the test to see if categorization will enhance memory. This type of research could offer new insight for everyone by aiding in the development of your memorization skills. So the hypothesis for the study was that there is a connection between the way that people process information and semantically related concepts. Semantic categorization aids in storing information and recalling said stored information. And since people process and store information in semantic categories, we can make the prediction that students who are presented with words that are organized by semantic categories will be able to recall more words by memory than the students who are presented with words that are not organized in semantic categories. So the participants that were in the study, there were 14 total. The participants consisted of students enrolled in an intro to behavioral methods, to behavioral research methods class at Southern California Community College. There were 2 groups total that students were randomly assigned to by the teacher, and there were 7 per group. And the teacher gave class points for participation for participating in the study, and also for answering a few questions about it after. This study was conducted in a classroom. I created a list of 30 words from 3 different categories, which were animals, clothing items, and furniture items. There were 10 words per category. And from those words, I created 2 slideshows. So the first slideshow had the words that were organized by categories. So for example, words 1 through 10 were animal words, and words 11 through 20 were clothing items, and 21 through 30 were furniture items. The second list was just the one with the unorganized words. They were just placed in a random order using a random generator. And they were presented using a projector. They were presented for 3 seconds, like total, 1 at a time. And then I also used lined and numbered paper and a timer for 5 minutes for them to recall their lists after the presentation was over. So to begin the procedure, I set up everything first. I placed the line papers on the desks, spaced out with enough space to kind of discourage them from comparing lists, and I set up the slideshow before I invited group 1 in. Once they came and they found their seats, I gave them their instructions, which were basically just to watch the presentation that was on the screen and to try to memorize as many words as possible. And then once the slideshow was over, they were going to use the paper in front of them to try to write down as many words as they could remember. I presented the slideshow, and once the slideshow was over, I gave them 5 minutes to do it, just to give them enough time. They did not really use the whole 5 minutes, but it just gave them more than enough time to write down everything that they could remember. And then once they were done, I had them exit the room, and I collected the pieces of paper and placed them in a labeled folder. And then before inviting group 2 in, I set myself up again the exact same way, except for I did the different list, which was the random organized one. And then I gave them the exact same instructions, made sure that everything was exactly the same as group 1, so that there wouldn't be any confounding variables. So the results showed like a statistical significance. A t-test was performed with one independent variable, two levels. The p-value was 0.17, which indicates statistical significance. Group 1 was shown through semantically categorized group, and group 2 was shown the randomly organized words. There was a statistically significant difference between them. The mean, median, and the mode were also calculated for both sets of scores for each group. So group 1 had a mean of 12.57 and group 2 had a mean of 8.71. Which shows that on average, group 1 remembered more words than group 2. Group 1 had a median of 12 and group 2 had a median of 9. And group 1 had a mode of 12 and group 2 had a mode of 9. You can also see the averages in this bar chart right here that show that the categories group, or group 1, remembered more words on average than the no categories group, or group 2. So as the results show, there was a significant difference between the groups of students that were shown the categorized list of words and the group of students that were shown the randomly ordered list. This finding supports theories about spreading activation and contributes to past and future discoveries of how people use their memories. The findings could also help with the development of memorization skills to enhance learning abilities. One thing to note was that there were outliers in each group. Having the random assignment to groups and multiple participants in the study would typically rule out this issue, but since the sample sizes were so small, it could have had an effect on the outcome of the hypothesis test. An interesting aspect across both groups was that the majority of participants had words in the recalled list that were not in the original list of words. The words that they did add, however, did pertain to the categories of the original list. So, for example, multiple students would add new animal words, such as tiger, which was not in the original list. And the same thing with all the different categories. The majority of students in both groups did this. And this kind of made me think of a possible future study that could be conducted, which could look into how people might create false memories due to semantic relationships. And these were my references. Thank you.